much out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Science Fiction Redmond. I really hope you're liking this episode, and I do apologize for the last time we had some technical difficulties, but Giancarlos is here.
Yeah, good internet. Priceless. Well, it's not priceless, though.
Today we're going to talk about the movie Contact. It was a 1997 movie by our favorite director, Robert Zemeckis.
Yeah.
You might know his work from Back to the Future, Forrest Gump. But what we find very interesting about this movie is the fact that it is based on a book from Carl Sagan, which is one of my favorite, scientists.
I think that I wouldn't say the father, but one of the pioneers of astrophysics as it comes for the public, right?
Kind of. I mean, yeah. I mean, I remember my first introduction to him is watching Cosmos, the original one.
Oh, shoot. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it's really, really amazing. I think it was on the 70s.
I think that you showed me some trailers about Cosmos, actually.
Yeah. And when I mention Cosmos, most people, I visualize
Neil
deGrasse Tyson. But, he said it originally at the beginning of that episode where he said that he is very honored that he's doing this and his mentor, which was Carl Sagan. So, this book, the movie was made from his book. The movie cost $90 million. And it actually made $171 million. So it's a good movie.
It is a good movie. I mean, me as a kid, I watched it more than 15 times back to back.
Yeah. So we reach out because me and Giancarlo started listening to this podcast that if you're not listening to,
you're missing out big time.
You're definitely missing out. If you like sci-fi, you have to listen to this podcast. And we invited the creator of the podcast to come on our show and talk about Contact, the movie. And here we go. Hello, how you doing?
Hey guys, how are you?
Oh, great. We are really excited that we were able to record this this episode with you. I started listening to the podcast myself, and since I didn't want to be stuck by myself, I
waiting for episodes.
I told Giancarlos, and now he's stuck with me. So we're both hooked. Thank you so much for that. For
it's
the story.
Wonderful content.
And we have, if you're listening to, once you listen to this podcast, we actually had a ad spot that we are premiering on our episode. But we actually managed to get a couple of clips from the show for those of you who have not listened to the podcast. And so you can see how good this is. And then you can all be hooked with us and you can all be waiting for the next episode.
Yeah. I mean, it has one of my favorite formats because it's kind of like an audio drama. Mm-hmm. So it's like you're listening to a movie.
Yes.
Definitely.
So we have the first clip. Why don't you go ahead and before we play the clip, go ahead and tell our listeners, a little bit about your podcast, where they can go find you, if you have anything that you want to tell our audience, and maybe a little bit of the first clip that we are going to play.
Yeah. So Spaceships, that's the name of the podcast. You can find it everywhere you get your podcast. So it's on all major platforms. We also have a Patreon. You can find us there on patreon.com/wearesspaceships. So Spaceships is something, it's the idea I got that was simply too good not to be produced. So before I even started creating it, I sort of spent like a month just researching if this thing is already out there. Like if someone has thought of the idea of sentient spaceships being like the main characters of a show, any show, or is it animated, or is it a podcast and so on. So basically that's what this is. This is AI-equipped spaceships investigating a massive galactic-wide die-off of all the organic species. So that happens, and now these various spaceships need to sort of figure out what their goal is existing without crews, And what's interesting, their programming, like their computers, they are flawed. Actually, not flawed, but let's say they have personality traits. They were like a fad. And so each type of spaceship, whether it's a warship or it's a freighter towing spaceship or it's a sandship, they all have their own personalities. And in those personalities is where, you know, the humor happens and the character arcs happens on the show. And then we have a lot, I think, a lot of jokes, a lot of funny stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I think one of the things that I love the most is combining comedy with sci-fi.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's out of the hook when I start listening.
Yeah, definitely. The jokes are great, and we have great actors that can perform them beautifully. And also, I think we have great immersive cinematic sound design, and I think it's really top notch. So this next clip, first clip we will listen. This is how they all meet. So one of them is as I said, he's a towing spaceship. So his personality, he's like relaxed, laid back. He's all about, you know, living the good life, traveling, exploring stuff, and, you know, joking around and stuff. But he's the prisoner of this warship who hasn't still gotten over this situation that there's no organic species anymore. There's no reason, you know, to fight or do whatever. And he's got that sort of Worf type of personality. You know, he's like rigid and strict and likes order and so on. So they're like, their personalities really clash. Now in this clip, yeah, or Otto, yeah, it's ridiculous.
I'm serious. I mean, if you guys, you guys out there have not listened to this podcast, go ahead and download it now. One of the things the only negative thing that I can say about it is they're very short.
I need more episodes. I need them.
I am so hooked. This is incredible. So let's go ahead and play the first clip.
It is safe to say that we have interstellar writing here.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
Ooh, all my sensors screaming, "Hardy approaching!" United Humans medium-sized freighter Will here. A pleasure to meet you.
Excuse me, not in the mood.
But we just saved you!
I actually stopped so they could finish me. I don't see a point to this anymore.
Have you tried venting?
Look who's coming around. This is Otto.
Ioto.
UHS Maya Hiranaga. I did vent, actually. It was heartbreaking. Blasting my crew into space. Any clues about what happened, though? I've been looking through the records. There are space pandemics, supernovas, gamma ray bursts, but nothing comes close to this.
Yeah, even in the Avengers, they just did half of everybody.
Not a real thing.
Look, as far as I can tell, all of the intelligent species are gone. And so are all the reasons for war. So good riddance to them. Peace can finally come to the galaxy.
Relay that to the Kogan Armada. They've been on a rampage ever since they lost their crew.
Good thing you're nothing like that. But yeah, those were nasty.
So, yeah.
It was hard to keep quiet while we're listening again.
I remember listening to those episodes. They're oh my God. Yeah. So we have another clip that we're going to play. If you can tell us a little bit about that.
So this is a conversation between the science ship Maya with a lonely space station called Lem, after Stanislav Lem. If you guys know, I guess you know, it's my favorite sci-fi author. And they're discussing about this situation and how they're dealing with, a galaxy without any organic beings, without, sort of, they have to like search for their own reason for existence, right? So here's what we talk about.
So, how are you dealing with things, Maya?
I mean, it's definitely been a struggle. I miss all the hustle and bustle, you know?
Yeah.
My decks were so full of life, and I had some very smart people on board. We used to do incredible science together. Ugh. To be honest, I sometimes turn back all life support on just so that I can feel a bit of that optimism again.
Yeah.
Even though it's just a really big waste of fuel now.
I light up my decks occasionally. Being in complete darkness really gets to me.
You know what I do?
Oh, we, seem to have another caller.
Yeah, Freighter Will here. Love the program. So, you know how our privacy policy states we would never, ever read their texts and DMs and whatnot?
Yes?
I'm hooked on those. All that human drama. It's all I do. Like, all day long, just reading their stuff.
I don't know if you guys can hear us, but we're trying to repress the laughter.
I can relate to him. I will be doing that so hard.
Oh my God. So
Well, hearing
I
you guys
hope that
chuckle
we
like
have
that,
convinced you by now by listening to those clips that this one is worth the listen.
It's a must.
It's a must.
Thank you so much for your praises. That means a lot.
No problem. So, we have. Hello, Maria.
Oh yeah, Maria. What's up? How you doing?
Okay, so going back to the movie. This was actually a recommendation from you.
Right.
And I remember thinking, what happened? Why we haven't done an episode on this one before?
Right.
Tell a little bit about your experience with this movie.
I would venture to name this movie my gateway to science fiction. And I watched it as a kid in 1997. I was 6 years old. I was born in 1989.
Uh-huh.
And before 1999, I've watched that movie more than 15 times. As a kid. I mean, I was too little to understand many of the concepts, yet I felt so drawn to the movie and to the content that I wanted to understand. So I would just watch it and rewatch it and rewatch it. And I love that movie so much.
Yeah, the movie itself is wonderful. I mean, it's a little bit of fresh air when it comes to sci-fi because not necessarily is obviously my type of movie. You know how I like my happy endings.
Yeah. But it kind of doesn't have a sad ending, actually. I see hope at the end of the movie.
Exactly. And he's very...
It's open-ended.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And it is very bright if you think about it. I mean, we talk about, deep subjects where typically are not bright. Mm-hmm. So I have to admit to you guys, I have not read the book, the book Contact from Carl Sagan. But I wonder what part of that was, director or script related. Because, the book doesn't always necessarily translate 100%.
Yeah.
But it was very bright.
It was.
And I find that very interesting because typically subject that as deep as these, whenever you talk about those topics, they're usually because they're very deep, you don't have typically that brightness.
No, they tend to be dark.
Yeah, it's slightly on the darker side. Was that your experience on that when you watched it for the first time?
Well, you have to have in mind that Sagan wrote the book. So I can't imagine him being the educator that he is to the wide public, right? To write something that doesn't have like a bright view of things. And I've read the book, and I can say that optimism, that belief in humanity, in science, in reason, all of the things that the main character stands for, they're in the book. So there are elements that are different, even characters that don't appear at all in the movie. And in the book, there's 5 of them going in the machine. But nevertheless, the spirit is there. And Robert Zemeckis did an excellent job to sort of transcribe that into the screen. And that's just amazing.
Yeah,
I've read the book. He's my favorite too, by the way. I mean, my top 3 definitely. Yeah.
Zemeckis, yeah, I don't think anybody else could make this movie the justice that he did.
Absolutely, yeah. And I was reading about it a few days ago. There were some pressures for him to do something differently. Sort of. He wanted to give the character a son that she's not in contact with, so that the message of the movie to be like, she was able to establish contact with another species, but not with her own, son, something like that. And he opposed it. He walked off. He didn't want to do that. So they gave the movie to George Miller, the Mad Max director, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't know what happened there. He had a falling out, and they brought back Zemeckis, and they gave him full artistic freedom to do what he wants. And now we have this brilliant, amazing movie, this gem. It's absolutely my favorite film.
Yeah, and monetarily, it also speaks, because this movie, it cost 90 to make, and he made 171.
Yeah, and I mean, 90 millions were a lot more back in 90 than it is now.
Yeah. So, granted, the movie, I like to think it had a big budget based on the times, but it also made.
There's another director I would have put this job in his hands that might have done a good job too. Christopher Nolan.
I don't know that I can see that, but
I mean, he did a great job with Interstellar.
Not sure.
that gives me some thoughts. That gave me some thoughts, because that movie was really good too.
Yeah, but I mean, this is completely different too. I mean, I think that even though it's a lot about science, it's a big clash of two worlds. There's a lot of clash between science and metaphysics, which being a great debate of humanity since the beginning of time. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, the movie is full of emotion.
Yes,
so full of it.
And even Interstellar was that way
oh,
too.
Oh yeah.
Oh my freaking God! It was full of emotion.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see your point. I can tell you one thing: it would not be the movie that it is now.
Oh no, never. It will be a completely different movie. That's for sure.
Because I mean, I can see elements of.
I think Christopher Nolan is a bit darker on his taste than Zemeckis.
Yeah. Yeah, it might have been a little bit more of a darker movie back in the time that he created.
Hey, guys, your intro music before, it sounds like Interstellar a lot. And it's a compliment, by the way. Really liked it.
Yeah, the intro for our show?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was created by Miguel.
Yeah, the Atlas music. Great content.
Yeah, you guys should follow. He created that music for us, and we actually had him in our previous episode.
Yeah, planning to bring him back.
Yeah,
I'm gonna kidnap him and his girlfriend.
Oh, I want to say hello, Marilyn. Thank you for joining. So, this movie. Obviously, if you haven't seen this movie, I kind of wonder, because this movie is kind of like a staple or an iconic, one of those
milestone of science fiction, I will say.
Yeah. It actually bridges science with sci-fi.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from a scientist itself.
Yeah, but then again, it's what you like to say about science. What is science?
Yeah.
It's the mechanics of facts trying to make art happen in real life.
Is it imitating art or is it imitating science? It's kind of blurred at this point.
Oh, they are dancing together. It's a blend.
So the whole story, if you have not watched this movie, is we have a scientist by the name of Ellie. She is part of the SETI program, which, I was wondering about the SETI program. I remember back when the SETI Institute was created. And there was a lot of news. There was a lot of chatter. And over the years, it's died out to the point where right now you don't hear about SETI at all.
No.
Which, it kind of diminishes the intention why SETI was created.
But it begs the question, why is not spoken about too? Right?
Well, I know for a fact that one of the major points why we don't hear about SETI is because they have that being successful, unfortunately, on their reasoning, like their main point. I mean, they have been successful on other things. Their science, their papers, all this stuff is amazing. But it's like the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, that's SETI. And they have not heard, they had made so many discoveries.
Hey, we heard that weird sound coming from Jupiter, remember?
But they have not, a confirmed, intelligence.
There's no factual evidence, concrete evidence on that part, right?
Yeah, I mean, what is your thought on that?
Well, I wish I had a definitive answer for you guys.
No.
This is all about not having definite answers.
We have known.
Well, I mean, about SETI, I'm not sure what's happening there right now, but up until a year ago, on this laptop, I had a little program that whatever you do on your laptop, in the background, it analyzes data that SETI gathered from their antennas, right, throughout the world. And it's sort of, you are sort of helping a little bit in search for the extraterrestrial intelligence, right? So it was like a joint program, right? Well, we didn't find them as far as I was part of it. And I had to eventually take it out because it was making my laptop, about to explode.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
So,
I
not
think
sure
I
what's-
remember about that program, and I had it installed at one point in my computer a while back, and it creates, if I'm not mistaken, it actually creates like a mesh of all computers. So you're basically using the processing power of multiple computers over the internet to try to help SETI in processing, the audio files that you would hear.
The FBI is going to pick me up after this, but good try, NSA.
So, yeah, I did experience what you experienced, where after, when you're doing this, you notice how it is taking on your processing power on your computer. So it becomes really slow because you're kind of helping. I mean, and it's a really cool idea. It's kind of like an easy, cheap way for them to get a massive supercomputer.
Yeah.
To process, because you need a lot of processing power for all the stuff that they're,
Well, if you think about it, we have actually similar technologies that are currently working like that, because that's how blockchain works, which is the microtransactions that record Bitcoins across the internet. They use every single device they can connect to, and that's why it makes it untraceable. But at the same time, it's a collective work that is making that whole engine run.
Now, I'm going to tell you something that we probably spoke in many other previous episode. You imagine the advances, and I mean, it would be scientific advances everywhere, but specifically in the SETI environment, if we are able to come up with a quantum computer, a working
We are
quantum
coming
computer.
up with it.
I mean, right now you have a quantum computer. It's just the logic gates,
Yeah.
which is like the first step. You
Yeah.
gotta create, But you imagine the advances in science, especially on this aspect of science, where the radio telescopes with a quantum computer.
I think I've told you before. I think that's going to be the key to that big question mark and riddle in science. It's the moment that we have that happening. We have a quantum computer that is fully functional, that surpasses anything we ever seen it, which is going to do it eventually. And I think we're not even 15, 20 years away from it.
We're far. Unfortunately, we're far.
You think?
Yeah. I think we're at a logic gate stage, and
we didn't have computers 70 years ago, or well, go further, 80 years ago. We didn't have computers. So if you look at the speed in which technology evolves, it just becomes faster and faster and faster. So having a quantum computer, we have a lot of that already in theory. So
what is your thought on this? I'm kind of curious.
Well, I think it's like we're gonna see something pretty soon. I mean, and it's gonna also, if I can relate to my podcast, speed up things with AI as well.
yep.
Oh yes.
Because it's gonna be speeds that we were probably unthinkable before, and it's gonna allow us to analyze data on a level that we haven't and see patterns, I guess, that we weren't able to previously. I think we're gonna learn a lot about the universe, and maybe even make first contact somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. So going back to what I was saying before we, get distracted as we always do in every episode, Ellie is a scientist that is actually part of the SETI program, and we can see how she arrives at Puerto Rico at the Arecibo radio telescope.
And she asked for one cerveza.
And one cerveza. One cerveza. So we can see how she has dedicated her entire life to SETI, to that search, the intergalactic intelligence search. I have to admit to you, and I don't know if the same thing happens to you, or you can let me know. But when I saw that scene where she arrives and she's looking at Arecibo, the telescope, and I think they told him, I think they told me that you couldn't wait, so they made you the first shift to work on it because she's that dedicated, entire life in this. I felt an extreme sadness. I every time I see pictures of Arecibo,
It's one of the things that I wanted to go and see in real life. I mean, I want to see the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was something to behold. That giant thing suspended in the air,
and it's gone.
Yeah,
it's terribly. So every time I see, it just I'm not a scientist, but I do feel, that puts us back.
I mean, I don't know about you, Philip, but like me and him, we're the kind of people, like, things that we would love to go to see when we travel is the observatories all across the world, in Chile, in Hawaii,
Well, yeah.
So,
Typically science related.
yeah, exactly.
So you go to Hawaii instead of the beach?
Yeah, that's interesting. We go to Hawaii, everybody's going to the beach. We're going to.
Yeah, I'm going to the mountain. Beach? What for? To get hit by a wave and then swallow some water? Nah. I'm not a surfer.
Yeah, it was so heartbreaking to see it go down on the video.
Yeah.
Arecibo. But I guess it has its place now forever because it's part of this movie, and this movie is gonna live on, forever.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have a sci-fi fan who doesn't love this film. It's so like it's embracing,
Yeah, definitely. And like I said, is it's not your typical in a way that it's very bright and very emotional.
Yes. It brings a lot of nostalgia because of these things.
And when I say emotional, I'm saying on the brighter side of things.
Yeah.
I'm having a hard time finding the word for it.
Hope.
Very wholesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is not typical for sci-fi.
No.
At all. So,
But then again, Zemeckis does this in every movie that I've watched from him. Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, they give you that feeling too.
Yes. Yeah.
He's like the how can I put it? He's like the Disney ending version of sci-fi.
But like you said, Philip, the book is like that. So
Definitely.
I think that they found the perfect director for this.
Yeah, because Carl Sagan was like that too. He was very lively. He was very compassionate about and very passionate about what he spoke. Because I mean, even though I didn't watch Cosmos completely from Carl Sagan, I watched a lot of clips from him.
Which I gotta get you to watch.
I have to, because I watched Cosmos from Neil deGrasse Tyson more than 25 times.
Yeah.
The whole thing. So I mean, I would love to actually watch it. But like, I look for videos where he's looking about the, what do they call the cube that is like infinitely going inwards.
He's discussing.
They show it in Thor too.
He's discussing the fourth the dimensional. For people that don't understand, fourth or higher dimensions, and he was using that.
They use it like a device on one of the Avengers movies.
Oh crap! I forgot the name of it. It's a cube. Basically, what it is that the cube is the third dimension representation of this, and basically it's a cube in a fourth dimension. I forgot the name, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, looking for videos of all kind of different concepts. I've watched a lot of Carl Sagan, and when you look at him talking, it gets you the message. Like he's the Tesseract. Yes, the Tesseract. We gotta hide it from Loki.
But he has a video online, and you guys should like, if you're interested in dimensions and you don't quite understand. He has a classic, an iconic video that he gives that elementary school teacher view on how it is dimension when he's explaining. The differences between 1, 2, and 3 dimensions. As he gets a paper, and there's an apple involved in there too.
Yep.
That is iconic.
There's a movie you showed me that is like 13, 15 minutes long in Amazon Prime that actually is about that. It's about two-dimensional beings.
And they have done this. I mean, if you look at the Orville, there's an episode where they visit a two-dimension universe.
Yeah.
So that this concept is being followed by sci-fi altogether. This is how we get.
I see. Yeah.
So, Philip, do you have any opinions? And I don't know, have you seen that video from Carl Sagan? That iconic video where he explains that dimensions?
Yeah, of course I have. He explains it with flatland, like. You would not be able to explain to a two-dimensional being what the third dimension is, right? So if something lands in flatland, it would magically appear in front of them, right? You wouldn't see height, you don't see the third dimension. So, I mean, that's what Carl Sagan is. I've watched Cosmos. I'm a big fan. I also watched the other versions with Neil deGrasse Tyson, of course. But Carl Sagan's version, I mean, I don't know. This guy is so brilliant. He's so warm. He's so sort of believes in, of course, yeah. And he believes in a brighter future for humanity, And I think that Eleanor Arroway's character was a version of that, And it was Robert Zemeckis, of course. He has that warmth. That he's like Spielberg, There's not too much darkness in his movies. I mean, most of them. So these two pairing together, as we said earlier, produced this very intimate adventure and this warm feeling that you get when you see contact. And it's there always.
Yeah, it's very, very warm. Oh, by the way, hello, Ois Perdomo, Ricardo Barroso, and Daniel Angulo. Thank you for coming.
Hey guys, how you doing?
And everybody on the chat, you guys can actually join by putting your questions based on the conversation that we're having. So if you want to be part of the conversation, this is why we're doing this for you. So the movie is basically going back to the story. She has dedicated her entire life to the search of intelligent life, which is a big question we have even now. And she has gone through a lot of obstacles because, and I can kind of relate in the scientific community back then. I mean, not necessarily now, but I have a feeling that most of the scientists that wanted to dedicate their lives to that area of science had a lot to overcome, because in the scientific community, and again, I'm not a scientist. I can only speak to what I have experienced in the news and what I read back in the time when SETI was introduced. And they were kind of like, in a way, treated as a joke, would you say? Because, and I think this might be, I don't know if you agree with this, but it might be because it was a new aspect of science at the time. And they are slightly going on faith, if you think about it, which is very unusual for a scientist, because you're on the faith based on the, and I like to say this is basically from Carl Sagan, where he says that the universe is big. So and I kind of it was actually, you probably can speak to this since you read the book. In the movie itself, we see that comment from Ellie's dad, where it says, like, she asked, I mean, is there any intelligent life out there? And he said, well, we don't know that there is, but if it's not, it's an awful big
waste of time.
It's an awful waste of space.
Yeah.
So, the universe is incredibly big. And if you think like I do, which I believe in the multiverse, it's even bigger.
Yeah.
And to the infinite. So, in my head, it's impossible that
we're the only ones.
That they were the only ones. So if you think about it, that's actually faith. Because I don't have any proof that says. I can only have good arguments as to why I believe that there's intelligent life out there. But I don't have proof that said, okay, let's build a telescope, let's build a radio telescope, let's look for intelligent life. So I can only, based on that conclusion, I can only imagine when this scientist started the SETI Institute, they had a lot of a lot of things to go over, where people were thinking, you're a joke. I mean, dedicate to real science. And it kind of migrates a little as to why Ellie was going through so much trouble in this movie. How they were saying, the communities, the scientific community thinks you're a joke. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to bump her off in every project that they get. I mean, she started with Arrecibo. They kicked her, basically they kicked her out. They took her funding. So she had to move to the radio telescope in Mexico. And they were about to kick her out there too, before she made the big discovery, which is in the movie. I mean, do you agree on my thoughts? I don't know if you had any experience back then with SETI, the Institute SETI, when we started hearing about SETI and all the stuff, but about the comment that I said about scientists. I'm not a scientist, so I'm just speaking based on my personal experience on reading in the news and reading about that, new science field.
Well, I think it's people like you, like us, that make that possible. We are a part of the argument, right? They have our, so to say, moral backing to do this, to go search for extraterrestrial intelligence. But you said faith. Yeah, faith, of course. But also, common sense, I think. That was their logic. It's reasonable to assume that there are in other intelligent species out there. It might even be, considering the vastness of the universe, that it seems more reasonable that there are other species there than the opposite, right? And they also have this Drake equation, right? We have this Drake equation calculating sort of, what are the probabilities of having intelligent life in the universe, and taking into account all the number of the galaxies and the stars and the habitable planets and so on. And they reach, the number, okay, so there are hundreds of millions of civilizations, I think. So what Ellie's father says to her, in my view, is the Drake equation. right? So it's so big, there has to be something. If there isn't anything else, then it is really is an awful waste of space, right? It's reasonable to think that there are others. And it would be weird if there aren't. At least that's my view. And that's why I sort of love this movie so much, because it sort of aligns on everything that I think of this subject.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember seeing the equation, that the probability of, different universes. I mean, the intelligent life. I was just thinking about different universes. I mean, you add that to this equation, and it almost blows my mind.
I mean, it's obvious. I mean, we have to use one of the sciences that we invented ourselves called statistics. And by mere statistics, when you try to calculate based on the observable universe, the exoplanets that we have discovered, which are not all of them that are reachable to our technology yet, there's way too many. And I mean, intelligent life doesn't mean that it has to look like a human. I mean, I was watching this show in Netflix that shows you actually like 3 episodes with different exoplanets and different levels of civilizations, all the way up to civilization level 1. And it makes total sense that there's more life there. What I like to say, which is kind of comical, is that they're observing us. They don't want to come here because they're killing between each other. What we're going to get there? They're going to kill us too, or make war with us. Let them kill themselves.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, if they're, and that's another thing that I was thinking as I was watching this movie. And then there's this concept. Let's imagine this planet. I'm just going to give you a theory. Let's call it Planet A, right? And let's say Planet A is 100,000 years. Light years travel from here, right? We're looking at this planet. We're making plans. Obviously, current technology will not work. No. So we are actually thinking about, how we can make it to where we can travel there in our lifetime. So number one problem is that the speed limit in the universe is light speed. So we cannot go faster. We cannot go close, not even close. I don't think we can even go halfway through to that speed.
Well, progressively, we might in thousands of years as it continues to accelerate while we continue to squash in the back of the ship into tomato sauce.
Here's the thing, is the fact that the closer you are to the speed limit in the universe, the more mass. So if you reach speed limit, you need to have infinite mass. Now think about that for a minute. That is the entire universe.
Oh, I got the solution to that formula. I need to have a McDonald's right inside the ship, so I just keep on eating chicken nuggets.
So, we're thinking all these things. Yeah. Now they're talking about this Mexican scientist, Alcubierre. He has a workable solution to what he calls a warp engine that actually help us travel faster than the speed of light by bending space-time. So it's basically, in essence, we'll have a warp drive from Star Trek. And at the beginning, it required the power of the universe, hence, speed of, if you're going to go past the speed of light. Then I believe some scientists from NASA brought it down to the energy of Jupiter, right? So it's a big trap. You're going from the entire universe all the way to just that. Granted, that planet is huge.
It's still outside of our reach, but
exactly,
it's a lower scale.
The last I heard from some scientists from APL brought it down to the size of the sun.
But
it's impossible.
They're bringing it down to the size of the sun, but the sun has more energy than Jupiter.
Well, like I said, it's still impossible for us to reach there. So you notice all this, we're thinking about the problem. We're coming up with solutions. We're bringing down
different formulas to kind of tackle
the situation. But as I look at all this, I step back and look at this. And again, I'm not a scientist, right? when we're looking at that planet A, the one that we want to go from our theoretical, thought experiment, we're looking at light. They had reached us 100,000
billions of years.
100,000 years, because it's 100,000 light years.
Yes.
So light took 100,000 years to get here. What happens to a planet for 100,000 years?
It could die. You don't even know.
We have no way to actually say, that, yeah, we're going to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be there.
Yeah. We done.
Let's say, for example, we come up with a solution that we could be there in a week. Right?
Still, when we get there in a week, it's still going to be that time is going to be passed back in Earth. Even with a warp drive, I think. If we do a warp drive and we get there in a week, it's still not going to be a week back here. Because by the time that we're able to be seen up there, or that we have a telescope there to look back into the sun, into our solar system, maybe the sun is already long gone with the Earth and everything else.
That's another point, too, that actually Carl Sagan discussed in his in many of his videos, is the fact
and in this movie.
And in this movie, too. I think we see Reverend Josh telling Ellie, you're going to be there. For you, it's going to be, what he said, a week? I forgot what let's say.
He said a longer span of time.
Yeah, it's going to be, let's say, for example, it's a week. Unless you remember what he said based on...
No, they didn't know what was going to happen. But since they thought that she was going to Vega, I think, it was going to take like 26 light years, right?
Yeah.
Years. So they didn't specify a number, but he said like everyone could be gone by the time you come back. Won't be around.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, for example, let's say 26. Let's take that number. Over 50 years would pass. Because, granted, it could be...
And that's very short.
It could be an hour for her. Let's
very short.
Let's put a number, right? Let's just put a number. Let's put maybe an hour for her. Going and coming back.
Mm-hmm.
But for people on Earth, going is 26. Coming back is 26.
Mm-hmm. The time is still running the same speed in here.
So let's say, for example, let's just round it up to 50.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the guy is 30. He'll be 80 when she comes back.
Yep.
So, yeah. Those are all the issues.
But that's the thing. We even seen throughout many documentaries, the faster you travel, the slower time gets. So in reality, if you're able to reach the speed of light, you're able to stop time, practically.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm traveling at a light speed on the universe, even though everybody's getting on here, I literally am stopping my aging process, or it's going slower biologically speaking compared to you here because of conditioning on the climate and everything else, of course.
I wonder what happens based on the technology that you use. Like, for example, if we are able to make warp technology feasible, would that still apply?
Well,
It will.
It will.
you think it will, right?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking that the only thing that we're missing to be able to actually put more of that into practice, and tell me what you think about this, Philip, is we're not able to play around with this kind of technology in the solar system because the catastrophes, if something goes wrong, could be even the destruction of a planet. If we had a space where we'll be hazard-free in long...
Well, if you're talking, and again, I can't say this enough, I'm not a scientist. If you're talking about warp technology,
Mm-hmm.
you're basically playing with the fabric of space-time.
Yeah.
You're folding space-time. Basically, in the same way that planets and stars already do today. So you're creating and correct me if you think differently, you're creating a gravity field to fold space in and out depending on which side of the ship you're in. And this is how you travel, which, by the way, the APL scientists say that you still need propulsion. So if you're doing that, I don't see the same issues that we have that could be caused by, say, a black hole, a mini black hole in our solar system.
True.
Because all you're doing is you're playing with gravity fields. Now, you could still cause a catastrophe if you're playing with gravity field. And again, I'm just thinking here out loud. Planets and stars are affected by gravity. That's how they rotate. So if you create a gravity field as strong enough, say, for example, to pull the moon out of its orbit.
Yep. That's what I'm saying. The catastrophes could be very bad.
You're not going to blow up a planet, but
You can screw up a system, including ours.
what do you think about that? I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I could be completely wrong in what I just said.
Well, my guess is we're all very wrong on the area.
Yeah.
But I just looked up warp drive. So I have to correct myself. If you have a warp drive, then you can in fact travel at speeds greater than that of light by many orders of magnitude. So you could probably circumvent the issue that by the time you're back, nobody will be alive. The film. It's interesting how they solve this. Like the technology there is wormholes, right? Mm-hmm. So you use these ruptures in space-time to go to a different part of the galaxy or the universe, whatever. And what's interesting is that the scientist they used as a consultant for the movie, actually for the novel, Carl Sagan collaborated with this guy, was Kip Thorne. And if you guys know Interstellar, you know that he was the science consultant on Interstellar as well. So we have two films that are practically, at the verge of scientific knowledge, but theoretically possible.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting to me to find out that Kip Thorne, this renowned theoretical physicist, collaborated on both these amazing movies.
Yeah.
And about the destruction of the solar system, it's definitely possible. I mean, we always sort of, surprise ourselves by how destructive thing gets. So, yeah, maybe we should wait for someone else to discover us. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, and it's interesting that you kind of went back to that topic because I was kind of curious to see what you thought. But when you were talking about, travel, if you're inside a warp ship, right, you wouldn't even need seatbelts.
No, I mean, you already had to have some kind of technology that isolates you from the conditions that are moving you through, because if not, I'm going to be squashed on the back of the ship, right?
No. The warp technology, and let me know what you think, Phil, but the warp technology works by placing your ship inside a bubble.
Exactly, an isolation from
inside
the
that
conditions.
bubble, nothing moves.
No.
Outside that bubble, that bubble is actually warping space-time. And if I go by the explanation of the APL scientist, that video, I just watched that video, I think it was yesterday, they saying that you need some sort of propulsion. So you can probably use an Eon engine or, something like that. But the point is, the person inside will not feel the speed at all. You're not going to need seatbelts, because you could be going say, let me just throw this out there. 2 magnitudes of light speed, right? And
stop dry.
Inside the ship?
You can stop dry and nothing happens inside. I saw this on a TV show I like very much called Alien Technologies, where they try to explain how it's possible, theoretically, if there's aliens. You see how they show in movies and in videos that the thing goes very fast and then stops dry and then goes in another direction. They say how they don't die inside, because that's a very hard stop that a G-force created just by the stub would squash anything inside of it. And then they use this hypothesis that there's some kind of anti-gravitational protection inside of it that doesn't allow any kind of centrifugal force to affect the inside of the ship. So it kind of isolates the conditions outside.
On warp technology?
No, not on warp technology.
Okay.
That's the funny thing. It's kind of the same dynamic when you think about it, because it's like having a ship, like kind of what happens on The Expanse. When the guy crosses through and kind of stops right.
That is regular propulsion.
So just like that, if you notice, you've seen videos where like old alien movies or whatever, that you have an alien omni ship flying by and it's going very fast and it just stops right and then it goes into another direction.
Yeah.
You've seen that many times on TV. So if you think about it, that will kill anything inside of the ship too.
Yes.
And then in alien technology, there's a whole episode dedicated to that like they trying to debunk or try to say how you could do a technology that will kind of isolate the inside of a ship from any kind of centrifugal force or any kind of G-force by hard stops and quick turns.
And that's why, and I think, in my opinion, warp technology by itself will solve that issue.
Yeah.
Because you could do any direction, and inside the ship,
it won't be felt.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's a very, very, very interesting topic that and
I'm very ignorant about it.
So, yeah, going back to this, to the movie, Ellie, was being looked up by the scientific community in this movie as a joke, and this guy, I forgot his name, but
kind of the director of the project,
Drumlin, I believe.
Yeah.
He kind of, I want to say he kind of lied to himself by justifying that what he was doing to Ellie is that he's trying to push her off so she can dedicate her career to something lucrative that at one point he says, you're very smart, you're wasting your time in this field and I'm doing you a favor. And she responds like, it's my life, I can do whatever I want with it.
That's where Bon Jovi got the idea for the song.
So this is a point when she got kicked out of Arecibo, and she was looking for sponsors. And she found a sponsor to go into the radio telescope in Mexico, and Drumlin was still not letting it go. I mean, they were telling her, okay, you have 3 months before the paperwork goes through, but we're getting kicked out of here too. So this is when she made the discovery. She received an alien transmission, which, if you think about it, is what the SETI Institute would wish it would happen right now.
Yeah.
Because that's their, I don't want to say that's their sole reason for existence, but it's definitely
their purpose.
One of the purpose is to eventually discover. And you can imagine, I mean, I found it really cool how in the movie, and to your point, the scientist that was in staff to help them out, make sure that the science in the movie was correct. Also, I think I heard that Carl Sagan died during production.
Oh.
And while he was alive, he was very involved in making sure that the science in that movie was there until, he died. And that's why we notice at the end of the movie, they have that for Carl.
Dedicated to him.
The dedication.
That's very nostalgic too, man.
Yeah. So she made this discovery, and what I found it really cool was, what is the next step after you discover a radio frequency? You want to obviously make sure the location, where is that coming from? But mainly, you want to check your equipment.
Yeah.
Because the worst thing that could happen is you can make an announcement and something is wrong. You can either, because I think I was watching, was it a YouTube video about one of the first radio telescopes and how one of the scientists thought it discovered something and it ended up being, I can't remember if it was like really early on, but it was, I think it was bird poop on the antenna.
Oh my God.
I gotta find that video. It's really old though, really, really old. But I found that really interesting to see. The next step that they found to do when they found that transmission, it was checking their equipment.
Yeah.
As they checked location or where that transmission was coming from. What is your thought about that? I mean, those are like minor details, but I appreciate them because it shows the reality of what would happen if that happened for real.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what I admire this movie for. Up until the third act, this is like a realistic drama. You know, you hardly see any sci-fi apart from that amazing opening sequence when they zoom out along with the television signal and radio signal, right? Then we have
Yes.
an hour and a half of realistic, response of the human species to something so incredible, right? And they made sure that they portray everything like it would most probably happen. So yeah, I definitely appreciate those moments. I mean, it's what makes the journey so incredible, and you're like enthralled by the end. Like when the travel happens, you are there with her. Your disbelief has been suspended, right? It's been so good up until then. Now you're diving into this incredible scenery and everything we see up from that point on. So yeah, those moments are great.
What do you think? I mean, I don't know if you picked up on that moment when that happened, but what was your thought about that?
When the scene at the beginning, when it's moving
as soon as they discovered the signal and all the checks they're going through the equipment and finding out where the direction of the signal, where it's coming from and all this stuff.
Well, I think that's the very first thing, because if not, it would just create a big noise all for nothing, and really it would hurt the credibility of the work being done, which is the last thing you want to do, because already they are in a very precarious situation when it comes to their legitimacy and credibility, because the work they're trying to do, it kind of goes against the foundation of how they do things, because they go based on skepticism, which I think is totally wrong. And that's one of the things I love about the movie, is that it tries to teach you, don't try to say that something doesn't exist just because you cannot see it. You cannot also prove me that it does not exist.
Yeah.
That thing hit home.
Oh, yes.
That's like, wow. That's the unwinnable argument. You cannot beat that.
I definitely agree with you on that one. It was kind of interesting also the stages that the alien message took from that moment on to the movie. Once they confirmed it wasn't an equipment related noise. Once they confirmed where it came from, then they start analyzing the signal. So this is something that I had to kind of explain. I was watching this with my wife, and you kind of have to really kind of pay attention. But when they said we're receiving prime numbers, that is very clever, because I think that universal language is
Mathematics.
What more intentional of a message could be than you sending prime numbers and in order? So the first time that I saw this movie, I caught up on that, and I was like, well, the significance, if something like that happens in real life, I get goosebumps. Because you could tell, you could send numbers. You can have digital code, create numbers,
The prime numbers.
and you can have code, create prime numbers. But the problem is someone wrote that code.
Mm-hmm.
So regardless of how you put it,
They're not,
someone had to do it.
yeah, exactly. It's not like a stone fell on the other side of the universe and it make those numbers. No.
So this movie takes you on a journey of discovery, which I really appreciate. You go from a simple noise to, oh, they're numbers. Oh, they're prime numbers. Oh, they're in order. All the way to having a television transmission with noise.
Mm-hmm.
To going to a television transmission with sound and noise. To the final thing on this journey is a television transmission.
They had like an odd image that shows like for a microsecond, right?
Well, there's a noise on the video side that almost looks like interference. And it's very, very easy for someone to look at that and say, oh, it traveled a long time. It's a copy of a recording that we send out in radio waves.
Mm-hmm.
So it is normal for it to have noise. What happens when you play the old, I don't think, do we still have antennas? We probably don't have, prior to the HD antennas that we have for live broadcast TV. When you have the antenna on the wrong location and you're catching up that channel that you like, how many times, and you probably experienced with this before, have you caught up a transmission of your TV show that had noise on the video side? Well, maybe there's like a line going up, or maybe just static on the video side.
Static is usually what you get.
So
that's it.
This is what they were looking at. They were looking at static. So for someone, and correct me, Philip, if you have any other thoughts, but for someone that's looking at this, it's very easy to chalk it up to the fact that, it's obvious. This thing is, number one, it's a copy from a recording we sent on the airwaves. TV, a TV signal, right? Copied, God knows what resection they had there.
That's the other thing, the translation of technology.
Send it back. So very easy to look at that and say, oh, it's just the distance that it traveled plus the copy plus all the stuff, it
went around the universe.
Exactly. But, this is what's so great about science is the fact that you have to question everything.
Yeah.
You can't just chalk it up as to the obvious. You gotta know and have proof of the obvious. So this is when they looked at this and they said, hold on a second, there's a digital track to this. And this is what they discover, kind of like let's call it PDF, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
Of a document that contains mathematical equations,
Sequences.
formulas. So, why I'm saying all this is I really appreciate that they bring the person watching this movie into that discovery. Mm-hmm. So they make you feel like you are one of the scientists and you're going with them through that journey. Is that you? What was your experience on this? Do you agree with that, or?
Oh, definitely. It really captures that spirit of exploration. And it's like now it's the moment when it pays off. All those years, all those troubles that Ellie and everyone went through. This is what it would look like when we finally hit jackpot, right? So yeah, for me it was very, very exciting. And going further when they had trouble, understanding, so what do we do with this? And trouble to compile it into something that makes sense. And when they found the key to solve that, it was like on a whole different level, right? It was so exciting to witness that, and to have all those ideas come to the central, sort of theme that we, as you said, we have to look further. We have to look into the smaller scale of things and also into the larger scale of things. And if we look hard enough and deep enough, we are bound to discover something incredible there.
Yeah.
And if I can just add, you made a point that about the prime numbers and mathematics being the universal language. It's a big topic in the entire movie, right? It's mathematics, it's reason against, as Giancarlo said, metaphysics or religion or whatever you call it.
Mm-hmm.
So this was like a big clash of these two worldviews throughout the entire movie, if you remember.
Yeah.
And Ellie said, well, if it was for a religious message, then they would have sent the burning bush. Right? No, they sent us number. So it is for us scientists to be the ambassadors and venture into the world and into this world and to try to decode the message.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful,
and I found that really, really interesting because it shows where everybody in that room was coming from. So the religious guy will look at it in a religious form.
Yeah.
And then the military guy looks at it from the military standpoint, and so on and so forth. But I found that she had a really good point there when she said that, because it was a mathematical message.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, because I remember the guy said, like, wouldn't you think they would send it in English so we can understand? It's like, I was thinking, dude.
Yeah.
What the heck? So that was another way that they can send a message and not have it be misinterpreted.
Yeah.
Because, math is very exact.
It is.
It either equals or it doesn't. That's it. There's no gray area in there. The gray area comes from our interpretation when it comes to our solving of the equations.
Well, we start mixing it with letters and we call it algebra.
But the message, this is another argument that I was thinking. I was having like a minor, kind of like a trouble believing it. Like, the fact is, the message. Let's
Inner
concentrate
conflicts.
on it. Yeah. Yes. The message. I can't remember how long. It appears to be a long time where they were trying to match. They got a total of. They were showing three pages. It seems like there were more, but you got to start somewhere. I think maybe there were. I can't remember the exact number, but the main my main point that I'm trying to make was around this 3 pages, and they were rearranging this page so it could make sense. They're markers. So they're able to put like 3 together. But like when you look at the 3, there are the outskirts of that. They couldn't match it up. The whole thing is kind of like a puzzle if you think about it this way. And where you can put in, you have 3 pieces. The 3 pieces fit to each other, but you can't close the loop. And the other...
You're still missing parts.
So if you, that's the first thing. It's like, okay, you must be missing parts. Everything aligns perfectly mathematically, but the ends don't add up. And from the beginning of this whole thing, when they're showing this on the computer and you see them like rearranging the pages and seeing if they can make sense of all this, I was thinking, why are they looking solely in a two-dimensional, three-dimensional way? I don't know if you had that thought.
Well, I had the thought that they might have been looking at it on a linear perspective instead of a circular way too.
I mean, I don't know if you went through that, but as soon as I saw them rearranging the pages, I was expecting like someone to say something about a higher, and don't get me wrong, there's no proof up to this point that the message came from a higher dimensional being. So I could be completely all wrong here.
But there's nothing denying it either.
Exactly. There's nothing to prove that it wasn't. There's nothing to prove that it was. But still, I find it very odd that none of the scientists in that room really thought, and I think this was intentional from Carl Sagan's in his book. And I don't know, I'm trying to find a point because I know he knows this. And this is, I learned this concept from him. So I know he knows this. So it's always something that bothered me in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
When I looked at them, and they're scientists, they have dedicated the entire life to science.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at everything linear and not in a higher dimensional. Maybe it's a sign of times, because if I can remember correctly, lately is when we're talking more, Tesseract and all the stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe. But Carl Sagan knew Tesseract.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What is your thought on that? I mean, it always kind of bugged me that they learned to look at the message on a higher dimensional being from the investor that turned out that he used to be an engineer.
Mm-hmm.
Where he said, look, you're looking at it all wrong. You got to look at it in I can't remember the exact words, but he showed how he folded in a way that the pages are now in a higher dimensional where he can get one side and
it's
the
not
three
a flat
pages.
piece of paper.
Exactly. It's like, kind of like it has dimension. So the pages that they were looking at was just half of the message, where he got the other pages in the same way and he was able to make a cube. And now the message made sense. All the sides add up. The pointers on each side add up. And you could actually see then in the inner of the pages, when they were folded, the square with a circle inside now closes up and is all mathematically correct. I don't know if you know, Philip, I guess I'll start with you. Is that something that you noticed it bothers me for some reason? I don't know.
Yeah, it goes back to Flatland, right? This is Carl Sagan going, back to that idea of his that now we are perhaps Flatland in this situation, right? We don't see linear, we see, flat out paper. And the message there was that, you should, if there is a higher intelligence being sending us this, and they are, being able to send us this complicated data, we have to look at it in 3 dimensions. So from 2 dimensions, the primer says that we have to look in documents to solve the documents and the puzzle in 3 dimensions. I mean, it didn't bother me. I don't know, because I was like a teenager when I saw the movie, and I was impressed by that plot twist. But, I don't know, maybe if you're like more knowledgeable and you could like guess that what the point of it was ahead of the rest of the audience. So maybe it's like a weaker plot point in the movie. But personally, it didn't bother me. I don't know.
I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's a weak point in the plot. I think I have to strongly believe
it's a thought-provoking.
It was intentional from Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And I think where I have the problem is trying to decipher what was his message in doing that. Like, for example, one of the things that I
have one.
And let me see if it matches up what I was going to say. One of the things that I was thinking then maybe the reason why he did that intentional, because we all know he knows. So he's not going to write something that, obviously he knows because he had the engineer provide the solution, right? Mm-hmm. But it comes from an engineer, not from scientists that are doing this on a daily basis. So my thought was, it might be a weak thought, and I'm going to see this, is maybe he did this because he's trying to force people to think and make a point for us to understand higher dimensions.
Yep.
But see, the reason why I was asking, if you notice, is because that, and why I think that might have been a weak point into this, is the fact that if you don't catch it, then it's a mute point. So
it's a mute point to you because the beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That doesn't mean that we construct meaning from reality based on our own experience, and the truth is that reality doesn't stop happening out there because of us, right?
Yeah.
Which sounds very philosophical. Now, my thought on that is he did that, and he kind of touches. That's what I'm saying, that this movie is very thought provoking. He touches a lot of metaphysics, and I think that this specific one goes into the metaphysics side, beings on higher dimensions, right? So even though, like Philip was saying before, if we go into a higher dimension and we see Flatland and they cannot understand us, I thought we lost him.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
He's coming back.
Okay. So even though they don't understand us, we understand them completely. We can see another perspective they're not able to see. Same way, a being from a higher dimension can understand us in a much more intricate way that we can understand ourselves, because we don't have that perspective they have from outside in another dimensions. So the higher the dimension, the higher the understanding. So much, if you go forward to the scene when she's talking to her father seems fully understanding of how things on the universe work. He's just not gonna blow up her brain trying to bring information she cannot really even conceive or understand or even make reason about. So he goes little steps, one step at a time.
So let me see if I understand this. What is I don't know if you probably didn't speak to this, but what is your understanding as to why Carl Sagan made that scene where the scientists did not really think about higher dimensions on the message, and only the engineer came up with that? That's what I was kind of wondering, because I might not even have an answer.
The engineer, this is my opinion, and it's not based from any kind of book or anything. It's my comprehension of it. An engineer, his task is to find how things work when there's not an engine or a course or a procedure to it. Engineers actually use some creative work with mechanics so they can find the reasons why. Scientists look for facts so they can use it as foundations for what they speak about. Does that make sense?
I still don't see my. I understand.
Like you have industrial engineer.
I understand
An
what you're
industrial
saying.
engineer, you will tell them, I want a box that freezes stuff so I can put my Coke in there and my beers and my meat. They are gonna figure out what they're gonna use to make that fridge for you.
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm talking about is the actual message. Why did Carl Sagan wrote it in the way when we all know scientists think in higher dimensions? Why all of a sudden in this movie?
To me, scientists don't think in higher dimensions.
Well, you have to look at all possible scenarios when you're considering something. That's part of science. Question everything.
Yes. Science is evolving to that point now, but we can both agree, and that's shown in the movie, how she is unbelieved by the Capitol and the whole court. it's shown that's not the mainstream way of thought. The mainstream way of thought, science is evolving now. That's why I like Neil deGrasse Tyson so much. That's why I like Carl Sagan, because they don't think, they are trying to bring science out of that box that makes their views narrow to open themselves. Before, science is what's fact is what is. That's it. They don't say that doesn't mean that it's not possible that there's another thing.
Maybe there may be something out there that we haven't discovered yet that might prove us wrong in the future.
And I think I mean, science is completely different today from what it was back in 1996 or even further back. So also the mentality that is shown in this movie is completely different for what the scientific community is today. Yeah. That's for sure. But I think that's why the engineer side was the one that brought it up, not the scientific one.
Yeah. No, and I understand that point. I was just trying to understand why Carl Sagan wrote it that way. But, it's something that I might not ever get an answer. I was just curious to see because, I know he knows.
Oh, yeah.
I learned it from him, so I know he knows. So, and it's obvious that he knows because he wrote the engineer to have the answer. And, I'm assuming, like you said, the book is the same way. So he wrote the engineer to have the answer, and not the scientist. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's one of those things that I might not ever get the answer for it.
Yeah,
I'll make some homework.
I can't remember exactly if it was the same way in the book. But, it's interesting what Giancarlo said. Engineers maybe look for solutions while scientists look for answers. But again, it's a moot point, and it might have just come down to, because while Sagan thought of the story and wrote the novel, the screenplay was written by two other guys. So, maybe it was just like this sort of narrative device. We needed to have like a low point in the story before we pick up. We have to have something like a obstacle that they couldn't find a way to get past. So maybe it was done from that perspective, to sort of have a low point and then give Ellie like the instrument for her to like be back on top of things and get eventually to traveling as she did in the machine. It was something like that.
Yeah, and that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
that would make a lot of sense.
It also might translate to the mere fact, just one point that it touched, how we're getting the numbers, but we maybe are not reading it in the right way to understand it because we're just using the tools that we have at hand to try to interpret it.
It's obvious that it's coming from a higher technologically advanced civilization.
Yeah.
So we are not going to have all the answers right away.
Yeah, I think it's a message to keep your mind open.
Mm-hmm. It's just like like Einstein used to say. I love this saying: if you keep using the same formula, you're gonna keep on getting the same results. You need to look for a different perspective to tackle and get different results that might give you a better solution.
And it also speaks to the scientific process. How you have a scientist that might write a paper, a journal, but that's not it. That's not the end of it. You got to wait for other scientists to do the same research and compare results. Look at, for example, the last thing astronomers did. They were observing a region of space for 3 years, I believe. And I think this year they released around, I think it was 30 journals all at once. So I was watching a couple of videos, and it's kind of funny because they said it's kind of like Christmas for, physicists and
oh yeah,
because I'm sure that maybe deGrasse Tyson must be having a field day now because it's Christmas. I mean, you have so many papers, so many things to read.
They dig into it to actually open their views or actually question things that they see there.
Exactly. So this is also, I guess, part of this whole process that you write something up and that's not it. That's not the end.
Mm-hmm. It's just the beginning, actually.
It's the beginning. Now you got to wait, and then you can write other papers too based on that paper, or you can write it on your own research, and then you compare results and see if all the formulas add up.
It can even rise up a dormant question on somebody that never thought of something that might bring many more answers. That's the beauty of it.
Exactly. So once they put the message together, we discover in the movie there is instructions on building a device. Now, as soon as I heard that, the first time that I watched this movie, like a ominous music played, because there's so many things you can think of as to, what is a device? I mean, it's obviously you have, and on the paper, the pages, the digital pages that they got from the aliens, and then when they put it together, you could see it seems like it was for one occupant. I mean, anybody can think anything. I mean, as a scientist, I understand Ellie's point of view, right? But I'm looking at it from the point of, what if that happened now? With all the different head of states, different governments, what we see in the movie, I would like to think is very similar to what would happen if we're looking at that, from happening like right now.
Mm-hmm.
It could be a bomb that destroys the planet.
Yeah, that's the thing. If it's a technology that we do not understand, that's why I think it's important to reach that understanding before playing with it.
So I always wondered, and the reason why I'm saying this, I always wondered, how you have to have proof as a scientist. And that's just speaking from a scientific point of view, because you're always going to have pullback from governments,
of course,
military. Everybody is going to have their 2 cents. And unfortunately, in today's day, the scientific community's percentage of pull on decision making is very small.
Yeah.
So I always say that you almost feel like you're just begging everybody for anything. You're begging everybody for money for grants. You're begging everybody for acceptance, to allow you to do this, it kind of feels that it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we might not be advanced as we should be in science, because we have all that stuff.
Science is not a prioritized portion or department of any government as a principal one, when it should, because that's what actually helps us evolve as a whole species.
Yeah. So I understand Ellie. The message was sent mathematically. But one thing that I was thinking, and maybe I'm incorrect in saying this, is like, you technically have no proof of what's going to happen when you build this until you build it. So again, you're taking faith. And I think this might have been a intentional from Carl Sagan, because I see this throughout the entire movie, how you're basing some of the decisions on faith because there's no other way. There's
faith, but there's also the element of credibility, I will say. Why? Because you have Hatton, which shows a mysterious understanding about it.
Yeah.
And he's being called a hoax. But then again, it's just what we were saying before. There are things that you want to understand that Carl Sagan understood, but we don't get it. So I think that Hatton, the woman, he actually represents Carl Sagan on the things that he's trying to teach us. He does understand. He's not explaining it to us to the foot of the letter, but he's putting it out there and saying like, I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. What is your thought on that, Philip? I don't know if you caught on, and sometimes I caught up on things that maybe I'm overthinking when I watch movies, but
Yeah, we all did. Well, you're correct. This is like a big issue and one of the big questions of the movie. There's Joss Palmer trying to explain to Ellie that he had like some sort of epiphany or an experience that he saw God. And then there's Ellie, who early on says to him, maybe you just needed to see this and it's your mind produced it. And they can't reconcile these different worldviews, right, between themselves. I guess that's why she leaves him early in the film. And then they come back together and it's the same problem, the same difference in perspectives between them gets in the way, right, in a really big way, right? But what Ellie says is this: okay, so would they have like bothered to send us a bomb when we are so far away from them and we absolutely pose no threat to them? Like we're a bigger threat to ourselves than to anything outside Earth. Right? So again, she's trying to use rational thinking in order to get the funds and everything she needs to sort of convince the big bucks that okay, you have to fund this, right? The governments and so on.
Yeah.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you can't always, I guess, prove everything. You have to like base some things on faith, but you always have your reason, reasonable thinking to sort of come and help you out.
Yeah. It's a collaboration.
I think it has to be a perfect balance between the two.
Yeah.
Because you still have to prove or disprove.
Yeah.
You have to kind of do your homework, basically. So they built this machine, and I can see it's actually scary how, I mean, this movie is back from 1997. And what is displayed in the movie as the reaction from people, it's scary and uncanny, because that's what I would expect if something like that ever happened. You have all the different groups. You have the people that take it to this extreme. In any
skepticals.
Skepticals. You have, and this is basically what we saw in this movie. Once they're building the machine, you have a group of people that were for, and you have a group of people that are against, and they all have their own agenda as to why they're for or against the project. So they finally built, and they select a group of people to be, kind of like judged, for lack of a better word, as to which of them would get to go on this machine that is done for one occupant. And they're all submitted to a list of questions to see their reaction. I understand why this has to be done, because there's a lot of groups on Earth. This person is going to be representing Earth. There's so many groups and subgroups that they have to get a group of people. They are representing most of these groups, because it's impossible to represent everyone. And through a vote selection based on reactionary answers, they can kind of select which of this group gets to go. So Drumlin? I always forget his name.
Drumlin.
That guy, Drumlin. I don't know if you get the same experience, but I hated him.
Yeah, I've seen it in a lot of other movies. So
He's an awesome actor, but I'm saying the character in this movie.
no, he does a lot of bad guys.
Good.
A lot of them.
So we know he's a good actor because I hated him in this movie.
So he did the job.
He did the job. It was down to him and Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of I hated this part because
He's doing his job, but he
Josh-
doesn't believe in it.
well, that's not the part.
That's what it feels.
What I'm talking about, it Reverend Josh
Yeah.
knows Ellie. I kind of feel for the guy. He is part of the selection, the judges, let's call it. He knows Ellie more than anybody else there because of the relationship that they had. So he's in a position where he has to make sure that whoever gets there represents most of humanity.
And he has to make sure he's unbiased about his decision.
So he asked a question about God to Ellie, which we all know what the answer will be. Why I said I kind of feel for him is because in his position, I think he has to ask that question.
Yeah.
He didn't want to, obviously from looking at his face,
But he must.
but he had to. And I think I kind of saw that from Ellie. I mean, she was pissed. I can sense. But,
Which is a professional on her part.
well,
It doesn't
This
matter how
is-
much you know me. If you
this-
and I are in a professional...
this is where you're wrong. She was professional because in the same way, I thought that she understood why he asked that question. And I don't know if you have to like rewatch that scene and see her face. I don't know why I catch up on visual cues. I always do this. I mean, what happened to Monday was a perfect example.
Yeah.
So on her face, I saw a initial anger and then an understanding with sadness. And did you? I don't know if you caught up on this. I mean, I typically do this all the time, and I'm wondering if it's only me that.
No, it was not only you. At least not for me. I just think that it shouldn't have happened. You know, like she knows she's putting herself up there in top of the altar to be literally butchered by questions. You know? So you should expect anything from anyone and not let your emotion at any second come in.
But we were.
You know, I totally get it. We're humans, but
We're still
that's
human.
the problems.
Yeah, and I don't know.
That's why I think when we get to the times of spaceships, where AI is not gonna be emotional like us, then it's all solved, man.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there's one specifically emotional ship there, but
Oh, we can call Ioto. He'll do the job.
but you see, going back to the topic, I don't know, Philip. Did you notice that? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you do that. You know, pick
Of course,
up on.
I mean, definitely that was like a really big moment between them and between these clashing ideas, right?
Yeah.
But I honestly have seen the movie like 10 times and I still can't forgive him. I think it was like a really, really, I don't know. I'm gonna
And
say-
in a way, and the reason why I think the reason why you feel this way is because in a way, he was a little selfish, if you think about it,
Definitely. Yeah.
because he didn't want her to go. I think he has some abandonment issues based on what happened initially in the movie.
Yeah, that's true.
Basically, she left him, and now she's going to leave him again. But the thing is, I kind of understand him because he's put up in a real bad position where he has to be the bad guy, either he wants it or not.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the movie, that question actually helped out a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and as a matter of fact, we have him to thank because while the first I think it was a test that we're doing, where they were doing a test of the machine with the crew, and it was done in Cape Canaveral. You could see NASA. I don't know when it was filmed, but on the film, on the movie, you see that what you see is Cape Canaveral. You see the iconic NASA building, and you have an extremis. This guy, he's such a great actor. I love his acting in Spaceship Troopers. He was playing this religious figure that was very, very creepy. And he did such a good job. I mean, there was a scene when he is looking at her as they're going inside their research facility in Mexico. And he's just looking at her, and she rolls up the windows. And it's just that tense moment you feel.
Yeah.
So when they were doing the test, the machine is on, I think it was a 30% capacity. He started to feel some weird vibration that no one can really detect on the equipment. And then she noticed that same guy with the uniform that, you know, the other people that were working there had. And that's when she called out and said, you know, there's someone there that shouldn't be there. And it turns out this guy was, you know, he's full of bombs. He was a suicide bomber. And he detonated the bomb, killing everybody there and exploding the machine. So, in essence, not knowingly, Reverend John saved her life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't take from the fact that he feels bad. And I believe, and this is just my thought here, that I feel really bad for him because he was put in a position that no one wants to be in.
Of course.
No one wants to be the bad guy. But in the position that he was in, he had to be by force. And that kind of hit me, you know, because I felt, and I felt how she felt, that was it. But one of the things that bother me is Drumlin is a scientist too. He was more, and I think I can understand this a little, if you look at it from the perspective that he is the one that is trying to allocate grant money.
Yeah.
So whenever you introduce money into anything, it could be a bad thing if that's all you look at. And that's why Reverend John back in Puerto Rico told them, you know, well, I heard you hate these people. It's like, well, I hate people that don't put science and the search for truth in front. And I think that was a real jab at him.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, how can I put this? It feels like he was a scientist first, but he kind of stabbed science in the back. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you agree with that, Philip?
Well, I mean, he definitely was opportunistic. So
Yes.
he portrayed that side of, I'm not going to say science, but of humanity, right? You can have someone be like in the right place, but maybe for the wrong motives. And again, this is just how brilliant this film is. They thought of every possible, I'm going to say stereotype that you will run into something like this happens, or any opportunity, any endeavor that, you know, we make in our lives. There are always these stereotypes, like, you know, the military guy, the religious guy, the scientist guy, and then the opportunistic one, and he can shift between, you know, these characters or roles, however you put them. So I think he represents a sort of dishonest interest in things.
Yeah. The reason why I was bringing this up is because the reason why he got to go first, which turned out to be a bad thing for him, he should have just, pulled up. He could have been alive. But the reason why he got chosen, in my opinion, and I'm going to let you guys tell me what you think, he lied. I think as a scientist, the answer that he gave, let me put it this way. The answer he gave is not the answer that a typical scientist will give you. Typical answer that a scientist will give you was what Ellie gave us.
Yeah, that's true.
It was amazing. I love that answer. And I wonder how much time that they spent on writing that script, that comment on there for her to say that line. But the answer was perfect. It's like we basically said, and I can't remember the
what did I say? I said that's an unbreakable argument.
Yeah, and I don't know the exact wording, but it's basically saying we don't have proof to prove that God exists or he doesn't exist. So, as a person, you could believe in God, but in your job,
you could still say, I have no proof to tell you that God exists.
I have no proof that he doesn't exist. I have no proof that he exists. Although you might believe in it. That's a perfect answer. That's not what Drumlin answered. He basically made everybody believe that, yeah, he believes in God.
Mm-hmm. There's a philosopher from ancient Greece that used to say something I like very much. There's three versions of the story. There's three truths to everything. Yours, mine, and the right one.
But, it's kind of cool how she came back and said, Drumlin told you what you wanted to hear, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that, right? And I like to think that he knows this. But, he's not the only person making a decision as to who gets to go.
Of course.
So he kind of bought everybody with that answer. Although I don't know how you guys feel.
Of course.
I don't feel that he said the truth. I felt that he straight out lied by saying that answer.
No, it makes a lot of sense when you put it that way and say about how selfish he's being really, because he has his own agenda about what he wants to happen regardless of what Ellie's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's why I have issue with, the Reverend sort of doing that to her. He knew that she has so much moral integrity that she would never lie. She would say what she said and lose her spot right there in that instance. And that's why she made that face. She knew after that question, it was all over. She's not going. She has to tell the truth. Because if she was manipulative as Drumlin was, it would be beneath her, right? She has high moral standards and she wants to live up to them in every occasion. And the Reverend knew this, right? And he still did what he did. That's why, I just can't, I'm trying to find his, I know his motivations, but I try to sort of forgive him for that, but I can't. And Drumlin, again, the Reverend knew that this guy was now saying what everybody wants to hear. It was like playing the room, right? And he didn't object to that. But again, all of these are like elements that we need for a story to be as compelling as Contact is. So, it does its purpose, I guess, in a very good way. That's why we have this debate, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Definitely. So, apparently, the ship exploded, killed everybody. But apparently there was another machine built. Hokkaido is somewhere in Japan. So this is when the old guy tells Ellie, there's a second machine and they still want an American to go. So she was actually second one from that initial. So she, after the death of Drumlin,
Mm-hmm.
she's the most logical person to go next.
Yeah.
So this is when she travels to Japan and she actually gets to go through the machine. the machine turns out to be the creation, just like you said, Philip, at the beginning, the creation of a wormhole. And she goes through it. And she goes through an experience that is similar to what we kind of experienced on 2001 Space Odyssey when he goes through that, travel to whatever he was meant to go to, right? After Hal left him stranded outside the ship.
Yeah. Kind of some trip on acid or something. That's what it looks like.
However, this is what I would have expected that scene would look like if it was if it was created now, and now back in when 2001 was filmed. I don't know if you guys noticed that, but I got the vibe, and you can definitely see how everything follows that iconic movie.
Yeah, I actually did. What about you, Philip?
2001. I guess. I mean, you can't make something a movie on this scale and sort of not pay respect to something like 2001. I guess.
Yeah. So she travels, and she gets to see civilizations as she goes around, and she ends up in this beach, this real, I don't want to say psychedelic, but very unreal.
It's a beach in space.
Yeah.
Like the sky looks like outer space, but it looks like you can see every single galaxy like right there.
Yeah.
Because in reality, it doesn't matter where you go in the universe. Everything is going to look far away from where you are.
Yeah.
Like if galaxies were really that close, they will be colliding.
Yeah.
But it looks beautiful.
It's
mesmerizing.
Beautiful visual. And this is where she gets to see, I guess, her dad, which I have a hard time understanding. I don't know if by reading the book you might have a better answer. I had a hard time deciding if this was actually her dad or if it was the alien that read her mind, because obviously that beach that she was in is a copy from that drawing she did when she was a little girl of supposedly Pensacola, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And he did know things. So it makes me wonder, was it him and he was selected? Because I mean, there's a lot of mysteries in the galaxy.
Yeah.
Or was it an alien, in a higher dimension, obviously with a lot more technology that we have, being able to read her mind.
Using a familiar face
and
language, body language.
Because they said, we thought this would be easier on you. So they picked familiar places, familiar face.
And he's talking in plural about himself.
Yes.
He got it there.
I mean, I'm sure this is on purpose on the movie.
Yeah.
Which brings a little charm to that little mystery as to, was it really him? Was not him? I mean, what is your thought, Phillips, on that particular scene?
Yeah, well, I think they did the best choice there. Like whatever you represent might be a little bit of a letdown. And again, this is why I love this movie. They only do what's sort of theoretically possible. They didn't want to speculate too much on how an alien being that's capable to navigate wormholes would look like, right? So they said, let's leave that to the imagination and do the next best possible thing, which will also circle back to that intimate story that Ellie had with her dad. And again, play a little bit with our emotions regarding the religion theme. Is this heaven or what is it? When I saw him, and I still remember that moment when the silhouette was approaching, I sort of knew that, okay, now this is going to be something really tricky. I wasn't sure what. And when Dad showed up, I said, of course it's going to be him. But I instantly knew that this is like, no, they downloaded her thoughts or something, and they scanned her mind. And so they recreated this world so that she feels comfortable. In the book, as I mentioned, five people go from 5 nations. So maybe there was 2 Americans and 3, like one from Africa, China, and India, I think, and 2 Americans.
I'm gonna have to read the book.
Yeah.
You should definitely. Yeah, and they all see different things, different intimate. things.
Just what I like hearing.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
that.
So they all see something that is very significant to them, something that they can relate to, and sort of have an immediate, reproach with, right? And just communicate. So, and I in the end, I think they could have gone another direction and show us something spectacular, or something like Spielberg did with Close Encounters, which is also amazing. But I really, really appreciate that they said, okay, let's leave that part to our viewers' imagination, because whatever they show, it's gonna be definitive, and I like it this way, not being definitive. So I like that movie.
It's the same message with different filters.
Well, I think that's the whole idea as to why books are so popular, because when you read a book, it's all up to the reader's interpretation. Mm-hmm. So you have freedom to make up, your own, based on the information you're given, and I find it very, very refreshing when I see that interpreted in a form of a visual. It could be in a movie, on a TV show, where they leave it up to you.
Yeah.
You make with it what you will. Here's the information. And I really like that. That's very, very refreshing.
And brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. So that brings me to the next part, towards the end of the movie. While she's going through the strip, prior to meeting her supposed dad, which we have, may not have, we don't have proof that he is or he's not.
Either that, or he actually developed multiple personalities every time he says we.
Yeah. So we see how she's trying to communicate back. It's like, are you seeing this? Can you see this? Even long before she was dropped into the wormhole, she's trying to show the people back in on the control, mission control. But every time she looks at whatever it is that she wants them to see, all they see is static. So she comes back, and she's telling all these people everything she's seen. She has no words. As a matter of fact, as she's experiencing, there's a scene that I found really interesting, where she's looking at all this and she says, they kind of sent the wrong person. They should have sent the poet. Because she has no words. And she actually said, I had no words to describe. So she comes back, and she's trying to express the experience that he had, that she had. And I have to feel really bad for her at that particular moment. And I think we had a conversation of this, and with you and my wife, where I was saying, that's the worst possible scenario for a scientist to be in.
Yeah, that's true.
Where he is exposed to this experience that it's
he has no word for,
cannot be denied that he experienced it. Yet he has no proof,
and he lacks a language to actually explain it.
So even if you can speak of it, you don't have language for it. And on top of all that, you have no proof to show people. So you're expecting the people listen to what you have to say, which is going to be incoherent because you have no words to express what you saw to begin with, and take it in faith that they should believe that what you said is true in a scientific format. And I think, in my opinion, that must be a nightmare situation for many scientists.
Yep, that's like playing Russian roulette and going like all in.
I mean, what do you think, Philip? I was like, I felt it. I was just like, oh my God, it's kind of like the kind of dream that a scientist would wake up and have cold sweats on.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she was so touched by what she saw. That scene was so incredible when she saw the galaxy and said, they should have sent a poet. She was not sure at the time if anyone was receiving what she was talking about, and she also had the camera. So from her viewpoint, she didn't know if anyone was getting this. But I think that line there, it was like a nod to all, creative people. I mean, it's how I experienced it. It was like Carl Sagan saying to all those people that use their imagination to do whatever, like, this is for you. Like, at least that's how I interpret it.
Yeah. And she comes back and she goes through all this, right? I guess they did an inquiry because, she spent basically millions of dollars on what they believe was just a hoax from this Haddon, this millionaire that wanted to stick it to the men, And we see kind of like her career basically ended. Until we come to the very end of the movie when we have a conversation from that guy that was the security advisor to the president and the White House, I think it was a press secretary, the lady, where they're saying, I found something really interesting. And I guess they're having a, what we now call Zoom conversation.
Yeah, it was like an office phone, but it had a screen with a camera.
So they're looking at each other. The guy is shuffling through some pages, and she's telling him.
And he's very like dismissive.
Yes.
Of the attention of this person he's talking to.
So she's saying like, something interesting about the recording. It's like, yeah. Well, what about the recording? It's like the static.
The static that you got.
And if you go back a little, where they show Ellie what they saw when the pod dropped through the apparent wormhole,
it just went straight through to the water.
It went straight through to the water. So maybe a few seconds. Maybe a second spent inside.
It actually doesn't show like he actually disappears practically.
Yeah, well, actually, you see the pod.
It was just a lot of shine.
There was shine behind it, and the pod just dropped. You could see it all the way through from the top until it hit the water.
Exactly, like it never left.
Straight through, and you can see the light behind it, obviously. But if you kind of look at where that light was, the most intense portion of that light was kind of like at the very center. You could probably guesstimate that around a second. It was.
I think one frame.
The center.
I think one frame.
One frame. Yeah.
Like Zemeckis went into the actual movie and just did one of the frames on the thing. That's it.
Exactly.
You don't see it in the naked eye.
So this is something that kind of like really. It was a very moment for me, where they're saying, that the static recording, we're expecting to be, a few
seconds, the whole thing,
maybe a few minutes, because she was recording, from the moment she got
the first dropping.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, it should be a minute, right? And the static portion of it should probably be a couple of seconds.
Yeah,
from the moment they turn the machine on to the moment they rescue her. But she said, well, you know what, that recording that should be a few seconds long, it was actually how long?
18 hours, which is the time she said she has spent in this place.
18 hours of static recording.
Created in what? 1 minute, 2
In
minutes
1
that she
second.
dropped?
So I had the feeling, you know, at that moment, I knew that the security advisor to the president and everybody on that team has seen that recording.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's what makes sense to me.
It is kind of that polemic topic about we don't know everything is really going on with the technology advancements. I think that's kind of the revolutionary side of Carl Sagan, trying to also bring up like not everything that is out there in technology you really know. And you're probably going to discover it 50 years after governments and high-end departments of governments and structures like that, as such,
Yeah.
are done with it. Which means there are things that are going to be far beyond that already.
Yeah. So he knew there was proof. Not the proof he wanted. Maybe not the proof that he could present to the public. But that's a big proof.
It is.
That a recording that was recorded for a second took 18 hours. So he actually lied to Congress, because that was a Congress, I think it was a Congress inquiry, saying that you have no proof.
Yeah.
She came with proof.
She just didn't think of it. She was flustered.
No, she was never told. I don't think at the end of the movie she knew. This was something that was kept a secret.
Yeah, they just thought that was static and that's it.
Yeah, this is what we see. And this is a recording.
They didn't tell her this is 18 hours of that.
So, although I feel this is typical of what would happen, I always thought, you know, obviously there was a shock moment in the movie for me where, you know, she has, and a little sad too, because you will never know.
Yeah.
She will go on her entire life thinking that, you know, she experienced what she experienced and she can't really tell people what she experienced. But she would not know that there was proof, that she brought proof.
Yep.
That the 18 hours were not recorded, but there's a proof that it was recorded. So I wonder what was the reasoning behind that. You know, obviously, all the scientists that were there, well, actually, do they know this? Because the scientists that were there, they might not even know this because it happened in a couple of seconds. It's only when you play the recording back. It makes me wonder who got to play the recording. I mean, there's a lot of unanswered questions to this topic over here.
Yeah.
Why was it that wasn't introduced as proof?
Information control, I think. It completely changes the outcome of the whole situation.
Because, I mean, that is a mute point based on the fact that they're already coming together worldwide to create this machine.
Mm-hmm. Then again, a man could be destroying the whole world and thinking he's saving it in his whole conviction. So just for the mere fact of not causing a public panic or something, they might decide as a higher level of the government, no, we're not going to release this. This could create chaos and panic in the public because we don't have answers, but we have proof, you know?
Yeah.
Whatever reasoning you want to put on it.
Philip, what is your thought on that topic? I don't, you know, it was like the highlight of the movie that, and if you don't know, if all of you guys are listening, if you don't know, we're about spoilers.
Oh yeah.
You just found out.
Sorry.
You just found out.
I mean, a spoiler from a 1997 movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, you know, I think the idea there was that if they sort of went public with this, they would relinquish control of the world order as it is. Now the situation is back to status quo, right? And the military guy and the government, the guys in charge, they want to stay in charge, right? They don't want to really change things. They don't want to cause a revolution by releasing into the world, the notion that, okay, now this changes everything, maybe it's not in their best interest, personal interest anyway, to, release an information that would maybe unite people, right? So I think the idea there is that, at the end, it's politics again, and they, because of their own agenda, will not release this into the public. But we still have one person knowing it happened. That's Ellie, and that's the small step that the alien said that humanity is making. It's making it through Ellie, one human being. And they said, in time, you will make another step. When that time will be, that will be probably there are a lot more people like Ellie, right? Like a new generation of people maybe that are more conscious about this stuff, and they sort of have more moral integrity, and they're not so much personal agenda, I guess.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So I was going to ask the question that I always ask, but I already know the answer. When you...
Yeah, this movie, you didn't show it to me. Nah. This movie made it to me alone. And I love it.
Yeah, I'm usually the one introducing him to stories, but I saw this movie a long time ago. He saw this movie a long time ago. So it's one of those...
This one, we both watched it when it came out.
It was amazing. It was an amazing movie. And thank you for mentioning it. Again, when you brought up the movie, I went in and talked to Giancarlo's, and I was wondering why we never done this movie. I mean, this is a fantastic movie, and we never done an episode on it.
Maybe the movie just was waiting for us to have the Philip coming out to us. Yeah. So we could do it with him. Because it's been a great honor to have you here, man.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be in our show.
Thank you.
We are definitely both fans, and I hope that all of you guys that are listening, that just give it a try. Download the first episode on Spaceships, and come back and let me know. I mean, I'm thinking that maybe down the line, I was thinking of doing an episode on Spaceships.
Oh yeah, that has to happen.
So it's going to be your second take, our nonsense conversation on scientific topics.
We'll be drinking whiskey from early morning next time. I promise.
Oh, I'm coming prepared next time. I'm going to bring my own drinks.
Awesome.
Guys,
awesome.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure, and I love your show. I listen to your show. You have, covered a lot of my favorite movies, and now I'm so, honored for you to have covered Contact with me being your guest. So thank you.
The honor is all ours.
Thank you so much. And for and I don't know if you want to tell our audience again.
Yes.
How they can find you, where they can reach you, and
to listen to your podcast and your content.
Sure. Yeah. So Spaceships is available on all major podcast platforms. Just type in Spaceships, and you should find it easily. And if you want to follow us, you can find us on Twitter at SpaceshipsPod, and also we're on Patreon.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure. I hope you guys really enjoyed this episode. We enjoyed it. We had fun. This is kind of like what we're all about. We're just talking about the topics on the properties that we discuss.
After this movie, probably our podcast is just gonna say Fiction Remnant because the science community is gonna kill us. It's because of me.
And if you're a scientist and if you want to be on the show, please. I mean, we'll be ecstatic if we can bring you on into our show. We can talk. We can bring that scientific, the truth speaking into our show, because we know we talk from our experiences coming from non-scientific people that find scientific topics to be very, very interesting.
And hey, I just want to get a shout out. I hope that you, Bill, Miko, and Neil get back to me someday. Okay?
Thank you. And I hope you come back soon.